Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts with Flynn. This is a weekly series on the channel where you guys can submit your questions and I will answer them. If you want to have the chance at having your question answered in this style of video, you can leave your question in the comment section below, in my Discord, in the Ask Flynn Anything channel, or on Twitter by tweeting it at me or sending me a Twitter message. With all the formalities out of the way, let's move on with the questions. Reaper Hunter from the YouTube comment section asks, what are your thoughts on rivens? Could they be saved, improved, or removed? So this is technically a two-part question. Number one, what are my thoughts on rivens? And then number two, how could they tweak them based on what I think of them? I think that a system like rivens is an inevitability in a grinding game like Warframe. I don't think that they are game breaking, and I don't think that they are overpowered. If anything, I see them as a fun way to make the weapons that are originally underwhelming pretty good. The problem arises when a very powerful weapon, take the Rubicle for example, is pretty much unbeatable, implying you get even a half decent riven rule for said weapon. Honestly, at that point, it's up to DE to really pay attention to the effectiveness and popularity of rivens within the game. There is no one else to blame but DE when it comes to balancing issues within Warframe. Rivens definitely have the potential to be a really good system that every player should be paying attention to, but it suffers from a lack of incentive to invest, and in some cases they aren't even a worthwhile investment. There are a few instances in-game where you could make the argument that you could really use a riven to make something more efficient. Take pre-nerf Rubicle rivens and Lanka rivens versus the Eidolons for example, but you could also make the argument that you don't even need to invest in the Eidolons as well. I think that the Division 1 did random stat rules the best. You would get a piece of gear that would have multiple stats, so for example, increased armor, increased health, and increased fire rate. You could reroll only one of those stats on the gear, so let's say I wanted to make a DPS build, but I wanted to keep the armor increase on my gear. What I could do is reroll that health stat to hopefully get an increased damage stat in its place, then my fire rate and armor stat would be locked in. That worked well in the Division, but the reason that it worked well is because literally every activity that you did rewarded you with a new gear piece with more random stats on it. On top of that, you were also constantly being rewarded with the currency that you needed to reroll those said stats. That way, it wasn't an extremely grindy system like we have in Warframe, where you need to force yourself into a certain activity to farm Kuva to then reroll the rivens that you get in a certain activity as well. On top of that, the rules on the gear in the Division had a minimum and a maximum, so it wasn't left up to pure chance. Maybe rivens with a certain disposition also have a minimum and a maximum stat, but it's not clearly communicated to us in the game. What happens when the rivens are exclusive to certain game modes or events and the resource needed is a boring slog to farm up is the insane platinum prices that we see on the market for good riven rules. Now you can call me skeptical, but I think that that was done on purpose. At the end of the day, you don't need rivens for any type of content in the game, they're just nice to have. If and when DE decide to add more challenging content, rivens might become more worthwhile for the average player to invest into, but as they stand right now, you don't need them, and honestly, I don't recommend investing into them too much unless you're desperate for the platinum. It sort of annoys me because I see and hear of a lot of riven trades going down where the seller of a riven is practically preying on an extremely uninformed player. If you're an average player of Warframe and you've bought a riven off of someone in trade chat, there's a very high chance that you were ripped off. This isn't a big deal for players who are playing completely free to play, but if you've bought platinum, you practically handed money over to someone for an item that you don't need, and the item has the potential to be completely nerfed later on down the line. The more you sit and think about how rivens are currently implemented into Warframe right now, the more you figure out that it's a really bad implementation of random stat rules in a video game. It kinda seesaws on a fine line of being a predatory business practice as well, simply because a premium currency is involved in some or most cases. Realistically, what you do with your platinum and rivens is totally up to you, but what I see a lot of players doing is investing into a riven, trying to get a god roll or close to it to sell it to another player, and then moving on, or a player searching for a half decent roll for their favorite weapon, getting cucked by RNG, then settling to buy it from another player where they're probably going to get cucked again. I guess what I'm trying to say is rivens as an idea are fine, but the implementation in Warframe is pretty bad, mainly because they don't drop a lot. Farming Kuva to reroll them is a pain. 9 times out of 10, some scummy plat trade is involved. You literally don't need them, and the balancing is pretty messed up. Not to mention, you can also invest a ton of time and have all of your hard work getting the best roll for something go to waste because DE decided to change something up. I don't get why riven slots are limited and why we have to pay more platinum to get more riven slots when a game like The Division basically hands random stat rolls to all of its players. I believe that the excuse used by DE was limited network capacity. I'm not sure how true or untrue that is, but from a consumer standpoint, it's not a good system. Making rivens more accessible by dropping them more often, removing the riven cap, making Kuva a more frequent drop, really balance the rivens and allow us to lock in at the very least one stat on them, it would make the system like way more consumer friendly. Definitely let me know what you guys think about rivens in the comment section below. East Wakona on Discord asks, ever since you got back into Warframe, I've noticed that everybody is asking or seeking Warframe related advice from you. I don't really have much experience here, but I'm pretty sure that will lead to burnout or quit all over again, so are you considering implementing some measures to ensure that doesn't happen again? Honestly, I've took to ignoring a lot of the repeat questions that I've been getting recently. I've made over 1,000 videos on Warframe, so I'm bound to have answered most of the questions that people have been asking of me, at least to some capacity in the past. On top of that, there are other creators' videos out there too. Now, I can't confirm or deny how good the information in other creators' videos are, but I'm almost certain that no creator creates any of their Warframe content with the intention of purposefully misguiding a player who's looking for advice on the game. We're all human, we all make mistakes and need breaks from time to time. I personally will choose one day of the week to make content on Warframe, then make like maybe 3 videos on that day. I don't play the game off stream anymore, and I've been streaming a lot less. When I do get back into streaming, I'll do it for maybe only twice a week. I do really blame streaming on Twitch for my burnout in the first place. Sitting trapped in your room for 8 hours a day, every single day, playing the same game and answering repeat questions while trying to maintain a conversation with multiple people in chat, being entertaining and also trying to maintain some kind of social life, it's more difficult than you think. So the short answer is less streaming, meaning less time on the game, meaning more time for myself and a more strategic, worthwhile work schedule. Moving on with question number 3, Morrow on Discord asks, what's your opinion on self-damage in Warframe? Self-damage kind of sucks. I know it's a hot topic at the minute. Honestly, I don't mind it too much, but if a weapon has self-damage and I keep constantly killing myself with said weapon, I just won't use it. Overwhelming self-damage where the player is killing themselves more than they're killing the enemies and enjoying themselves is, in my opinion, a design flaw that should be looked at and tweaked. So that was a short but sweet question. Estally96, I called this guy Estally69 in the last video, I'm sorry. He asks, there have been several posts on the forums about the Dark Sector conflicts or PvP. What are your thoughts on the Dark Sectors, and if they were to be brought back, what would you like to see from it? Now, I was around whenever Dark Sectors were originally PvP, and let me tell you that they were not good. I believe that DE just can't do PvP in Warframe. I don't think that it's ever going to work, and no matter how hard they try, they're just not going to be able to do it. The only way that I ever see PvP being enjoyable in Warframe is if they change up how the Warframe abilities affect the other players and they make the abilities have a cooldown opposed to having to collect energy to use them while also playing an objective style game mode that is custom made to suit Warframe's gameplay. I want you to think of the Warframes more like heroes in Overwatch, and then think of the debuffs that you can apply to other players in Overwatch, such as being frozen, trapping them, stunning them, etc. That's honestly the only way that I see PvP ever working in Warframe. Everything would have to be redone, rebalanced, and custom made. I don't think the DE will or should ever take PvP seriously in Warframe. Definitely let me know what you guys think of PvP in Warframe in the comment section below. Kristen on Discord asks, what's your thoughts on crossplay or the possibility of cross-save? I think the crossplay would be a good addition for Warframe for two big reasons. Number one, it just makes sense. It's a co-op game that is heavily praised for having one of the best communities around. And number two, it would finally force DE to start properly scheduling their updates. If crossplay is going to happen, it'll happen with the release of Warframe on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. If we don't get it then, we're never going to get it. Cross-save, on the other hand, might be possible, but I wouldn't hold my breath, and I don't think that it's going to be exactly what people want it to be if we get it. Cross-save isn't going to be like you can have your character on PC and the PlayStation, play a mission on the PlayStation, and then whatever progress you made on the PlayStation will also be available on the PC. I don't think that version of cross-save will ever happen, but I do think that at some point DE will have windows where players can transfer their data between systems to sort of create separate save files, so to speak. It would be nice, but I don't think that what we want is going to happen. Cellophane1699 on Discord asks, do you think the DE should pause on making missions, types, or game modes that introduce new game mechanics and rather focus on redesigning old or forgotten game mechanics into everyday play? A good example would be the Syndicate missions. Instead of having two separate missions on a node, the Syndicates could randomly give the player a secondary objective. Like if the player was running a rescue mission, for example, the rescue target might just be from Steel Meridian, and at the end of the mission, the target could give information about a capture target in that same mission, giving you the option to extract or capture said new target, which will grant you more XP and increase your standing with that syndicate. This is definitely a cool idea, but the problem is that it's already extremely easy to cap out your syndicate standing every single day just by playing. I know that isn't the case for absolutely everybody, but I think that most people are able to max out their syndicate standing pretty easily. I think for something like your suggestion to be implemented, there would need to be a complete rework for the syndicate system in general, kind of like you were asking. The thing is though, is a complete syndicate system overhaul necessary? You know what they say, don't fix what isn't broken. Honestly, it comes down to how many people feel strongly about a certain system being underwhelming within the game. The syndicate system is a system that is used by every player, so every player should have an opinion on it because they should be paying attention to it, but how many people actually have a problem with the system itself is up for debate. I for one slapped my syndicate sigil on the back of my frame, turned down the opacity, and passively farm up my reputation with my chosen syndicate. At the point that I'm at, I really don't care about the syndicate system that much because there's not much incentive for me to care. They could totally make the syndicate system way better by using it to reward the player with evergreen rewards. Evergreen rewards are basically rewards that keep their value no matter the time invested. So for example, Endo is evergreen because you're always going to need it. Relics are technically evergreen because you can always use them to farm parts and then sell those parts for plat. There's a lot of old content that DE definitely need to look at and make more rewarding. If, when, and how they'll do that, I don't know, because we have to keep in mind they don't want to spoil us with too many goodies, because if they do give us too much, the amount of time that you're going to spend on the game goes down, and on top of that, the percentage chance of you spending money goes down as well, and that isn't what DE wants. I personally wouldn't mind it if they went and reworked a few things. The thing is though, I can't really predict how I would feel until the rework came out, because it would have to be worthwhile to justify putting other things on hold for said rework. Or they could just, make good systems to begin with, and then that would save a lot of trouble. Let me know what you guys think about reworking systems in Warframe in the comment section below. Ozagari on Discord asks, thoughts on something like a difficulty adjustment option being added to certain content so it would appeal to all types of players, something like Mayhem mode in Borderlands 3. Again, on paper this is a cool idea, but it depends on the implementation and the incentives. Harder content in Warframe 2 DE basically means increasing armor and damage values, enemy immunity to damage, and knockdowns. I personally believe that DE could do a way better job with their enemy design to make the game more difficult. For example, as annoying as nullifiers are, at least they force you to change up how you play just a tiny bit to avoid the negative consequences that their bubbles have. So once DE start making more difficult enemies, I can totally see this becoming a thing, but until then, it won't happen because the current enemies in the game are extremely easy to deal with, and to your experienced player, who an increased difficulty mode would appeal to, this game is pretty much a walk in the park. On top of that, we mentioned incentive. If there is no real rewarding reason to play the increased difficulty content, people aren't going to do it. They either have to introduce something new and worthwhile to farm, or offer really lucrative items such as refined relics or a ton of evergreen resources per rotation. Problem is that it makes other content in the game not worth it to play, and it also speeds up the player's progression, meaning they'll spend less time on the game, which again goes hand in hand with spending less money in the game, which DE don't want. I think that they need to work on introducing tougher enemies like the Nullifier, Nox, and maybe more sentient enemies that require just a tad more brain power to take down. Then they can think about introducing more challenging difficulty modifiers. Definitely let me know what you guys think about difficulty modifiers in Warframe in the comments section below. Runic on Discord asks, what's your opinion on sorties and how would you improve them? I like sorties because they are high level content with good rewards at the end that you can do on a daily basis. I believe the DE need to work on implementing more content like this, where you do something that is worth it every single day on the game to create a more positive feedback loop. Take for example a raid of some sorts. Thing is though, I haven't touched sorties in a long time, and this is definitely a problem that is limited to a player like myself who plays the game way too much. I don't see a lot wrong with the sorties as they are right now. The only way that I can think of improving them is having one sortie per faction per day. So you'd have a Grenier sortie, a Corpus sortie, an Infested one, and a Corrupted one. This way you have more content to play on a daily basis and you get more rewards. Problem is though, if you're getting rewarded too much on a daily basis, the player retention may go down because the player is getting more powerful faster. Another thing that they could do is make the last mission of every sortie an endurance mission that rewards nothing but refined relics per every rotation. This way it would be worth it to do an endurance run because you'd be getting rewarded and it would actually start at a higher level. Because you'd have multiple different sorties in a day, they could put different relics in the endurance runs. So for example, you might be able to get the refined relics for Ivara Prime and her weapons from the endurance run versus the corrupted. Then you might be able to get the refined relics for Atlas Prime and his weapons from the endurance run versus the Grenier. Personally, I'd love that to be implemented. No idea if they would ever do it, but I can only assume that they wouldn't because it makes farming something that they want you to buy more efficient. Let me know what you guys could change about sorties in the comment section below. Captain CruiseNet on Discord asks, I'm not sure if you've already been asked this, but with the devs taking a look into raids and stuff, what are your thoughts with DE implementing the Holy Trinity system in the game, like making healers and tanks more needed and try to push a little bit more for team play? I would actually love for this to happen. I think the idea of giving frames a role and forcing the people to co-op in that way is a good idea. The thing that holds them back though is their philosophy of allowing the player to pick and choose the equipment that they want to use. You can even see this on forum threads and in YouTube comment sections where people are saying that they don't want to be forced into co-oping in Warframe. It's understandable why that's the case because everybody has their favorite frames and weapons and stuff like that, but I think that if DE want the player retention to go up, they'll need to eventually cave in and add a game mode where people have to co-op in a meaningful way. It's clear to me at least that the game alone can't hold people over forever. I think that it just goes without saying that the game needs more goals to shoot for rather than just being the sandbox that at the end of the day really has no purpose other than to kill time. Implementing the Holy Trinity system gives people a reason to invest into different types of frames and create different types of builds, and that falls into the vein of being a goal to shoot towards. Let me know what you guys think of a Holy Trinity system in Warframe in the comments section below. Neon Shit, nice name, on Discord asks, do you think it's more important for Warframes to have more synergies within their own abilities like Gauss or have more team synergy like Trinity or ones like that? Ideally, you want both. Take for example Nova. She has nice synergy in her own kit, but she also pairs very well with the likes of Mag or Nyx in the crowd control department. The thing is though, we're running into the issue now with the game where a lot of the abilities sort of feel like copy and paste of one another. Take for example Gauss and then compare him to Valkyr. Gauss's first ability and Valkyr's first ability are both movement abilities. Gauss's second ability and Valk's second ability both grant the player with more defensive capabilities. Gauss's third and Valk's third are both setup abilities. Gauss just strips armor while Valkyr sets up finishers. And then Gauss's 4 is similar to Valk's 2 as it gives more attack speed. It gives a few other buffs as well, but you get what I mean. The only thing that he's missing out on is an exalted weapon. I've seen people call Gosh just a better Valkyr, and honestly, I can't really disagree with him. I think that Valk is probably a little bit more tanky, but for the level of content that you have to play in Warframe right now, Goss's kit is going to do just fine. On top of that, he's far easier to mod too. Everything on his build is basically just like invest a ton of duration in, and then that's it. As it stands right now, DE's frame design has been straying away from practical and more towards fun, which is both good and bad. It really depends on the direction of the game moving forward and your own personal tastes. Let me know what you guys think about DE's recent frame design in the comment section below. CDog from Discord asks, what are your hopes for Warframe in the next year in terms of content? Example given, lore, weapons, frames, railjack changes, and overall more progression systems. To be honest, I want to see raids and more lore content this year. I know that I'm going to be disappointed because they're going to invest more time in the railjack, but I would like there to be a reason to jump back in the voice chat with my clan again and actually play the game opposed to just checking out the new things. It would be nice if we got a raid with every single cinematic quest drop that actually gave us things that are worthwhile to farm, like ancient weapons or frames or something like that. The possibilities with Warframe are honestly endless, so they could just make something up and then toss it in as a reward at the end of the raid, then call it a day. I don't really mind what else we get if I'm given a reason to log on every single day and be social with people who also play the game. DE just need to make sure that their little sub-communities within the game are happy. I really enjoyed raiding because it was just a fun time, but ever since they were removed, myself and many others who enjoy the raids feel quite alienated. Endurance runs would be cool to bring back too, so making the best builds would actually mean something again, because the game right now, you can pretty much put any old build together and you'll be able to do all of the content. I'm hopeful that they eventually will add these things, but I might be considered a fool for thinking that, which I probably am, but we'll see. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of Thoughts with Flynn. Remember, if you want to have the chance at having your questions answered, all you have to do is leave it as a comment below this video or leave it in the Ask Flynn Anything channel in my Discord. You can also tweet it at me or send it to me via a private message on Twitter. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I am getting a little bit sick, so that's why my voice sounds really different today. But yeah, thank you for putting up with it regardless. Like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you disliked it, subscribe for more Warframe content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.